Hi, I'm Rob Boyd, an English photographer from the UK. I decided to create this podcast series talking to international photographers whose work I truly love. I realised I knew nothing about these amazing people apart from their names and their stunning work. So I created a set of hopefully entertaining questions that finds out who they are and what they love. Hi Todd, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate you being here.
Hey there, Rob. My pleasure. It's nice to see your face again. Last time I saw you, I think, was at the festival in London.
Yeah, that was amazing. I loved every second of that. It was incredible.
Glad to hear that. It was a good time for all, I think. I think everybody had a good time.
Absolutely. So if you could start by your name and your Instagram name, that'd be amazing.
Sure. Todd Visser. And my Instagram name is Zoomento, Zoomento.
And I've been meaning to ask, where did that come from?
You know, I get asked that question a lot. I don't know if it's like the best handle for Instagram, but I used to do a lot of travel with work. So I had this job where they used to send me around the United States and its territories. And I was sitting around in hotels at night, not doing anything, watching the news, getting depressed, because the news isn't like pump you up, feel good stuff. It's more, it's the news. The news isn't about good news typically. So I decided I'd start doing some photography. And because I was traveling so much, the Zoom kind of meant the travel, and then Mento kind of memories of it. It's not the best name ever, but it's one I got, so I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah, perfect answer. I love it. So have you got a website? I guess you must have.
Yeah, zoomento.com. Right now, the website only consists of the zine that I just released, Ed. So that's all that's on there. Nothing else. I'm putting together a resume, doing some other stuff. We have some other stuff coming up. Not ready to release right at this particular moment in time, but the next couple weeks, got some exciting stuff coming up. So you can go either to streetbadass.com, keep up with the Street Badass that way, or zoomento.com.
Excellent. Yeah, brilliant. And so where do you live?
I live in Paris. I'm an American. We've been here in France now for about 6 years, more or less. I fly all over the place, so I go back to the States quite a bit, but my kids go to school here. We're based here. This is home. Great place to be, I got to be honest with you. I can't complain.
Where you're from then? Where are you from originally?
Originally from Michigan. That's the state surrounded by lakes in the northern part of the United States. I stayed there until about 18 years old or so. Then I went travel around, lived in France for a while, lived in Budapest, lived in Argentina. I used to be an English teacher, so that got me around a little bit. I taught English as a foreign language. And then I settled in Florida. I stayed in Florida for about 20 years, a little bit more than 20 years, I guess, in the St. Pete, Tampa area. And then we left from there and came here to Paris. So Michigan guy originally. They say you can take the guy out of Michigan, but you can't take the Michigan out of the guy.
Excellent stuff. So if I came to visit you, where would you take me to shoot?
If we were coming to Paris, I'd probably take you to the 17th district. That's the district that I'm in right now. It's not super well known, but because I walk around here a lot, I've got a lot of people that I meet almost, at least a couple times a week. So I'm on a first name basis with a lot of people here. And I think they kind of know me as that American guy who takes pictures. And so it takes a while to get people to warm up. In Paris, it's not like London or other places where they're kind of dying for a photo. Here, they're not necessarily dying for photos. So I know a lot of people here. And then I'd probably take you down to Rivoli. That area is really good. I think probably if you were to compare it to some place in New York, Rivoli's kind of the Fifth Avenue of Paris, or the Oxford Street of Paris, where everybody goes on a Saturday and a Sunday. It's a big, wide street, so you can get some great shots. It's close to the Louvre. It's close to the Palais Royal. It's close to Hotel de Ville, where they have where the very famous picture was taken, the kiss by Douaneau. So you can walk right by that corner. So that's pretty cool too. A lot of good scenery in the background of the photos here in Paris.
Excellent. Yeah, I love Paris. Like I say, this every time you come, there's always somewhere different, and somebody always shows you something, another hidden corner.
It's a huge city, man. And the thing, I typically stay kind of north of the river. That's kind of my stomping grounds. The 17th, I go to the Marais, go up to like Montmartre in that area. But if you go down just south of the river, it's like this whole new city. It's like, what? And it's just huge. We were down there yesterday and went to an art fair, which was kind of like more arts and crafty than art. We thought it would be a little bit more art and craft, but it was arts and craft, but it was worth going. And it was a whole part of the city that I don't go to that often. It's just reminded me how huge this place is.
Yeah, excellent. So I know you travel a lot. So where's your favorite destination in the world?
I love Paris. I love being here, but if I'm going to travel, I'd have to say Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires is one of those cities. It's kind of like the girl that got away. It was a city that I always wanted to live in. It didn't work out. I tried on several occasions to make that work out. I tried to teach there. It's just, wasn't in the cards for me, but it didn't keep me from going back. But it's a lot like Paris in a way. But I have to say, it is a beautiful city. There's a lot of interesting architecture, but the thing about Buenos Aires, the people are so cool. They're completely open to like taking pictures. They'll tell you no if they don't want a picture, but they're super friendly. And there's just a lot of really interesting things going on, a lot of interesting characters. If you think about, if you have a city that has like tango, and you have a city that has gauchos, and you have a city that has soccer. I think Buenos Aires in particular, I think has like 18 professional soccer teams. And I'm not talking about like just tiny little place. I'm talking about like big stadiums, completely full of people going bananas. And you go to one of the soccer games over there, it's just insane. It's so much fun. Those guys, people are laughing. I mean, you go the full range of emotions. People are laughing, they're crying. Everything's going on in those soccer games. One of the funniest things I saw there last time I was there, it was so hot. Like it was like this full on winter, or excuse me, winter here, but summer over there. And so everybody's just, drenched in sweat. They came out with these fire hoses and they're just spraying down the whole crowd and everybody was going bananas. And I took a couple pictures, but I got out of there because I'm like, man, I don't think I can get this camera wet. It's not going to work. But it was good. You can't miss any team that you go to see, though. I know that I'm kind of bound to the Hurricane because that was the deal. I found out later. But so I'm a Hurricane fan. In fact, I've got my hat right here. Here's my hat, my Hurricane hat. If I wear that around town in Paris, I always have people start screaming and yelling, and it'll be a Hurricane fan that's visiting. Happens quite often because they're pretty fanatic. But if you go to any kind of football game there, any soccer game, you can't miss. You're going to have like the best time. These guys are just going crazy. Plus, they can really play. And I'm not even really that much into sports. I'm a photographer. I don't hate sports or anything, but this was kind of I got pulled into it. But that's the place, man. Buenos Aires is amazing. South America in general is a great place. I think that it's one of those things it's expensive to get there from Europe. I mean, really expensive. And I think that Buenos Aires, as far as its location, it's almost on the other side of the planet, because it's in the southern hemisphere, super far from Europe, but it's It's an amazing place, and the atmosphere is unbeatable. It's kind of like party every weekend, sometimes every night.
I'll put it on my list. Definitely. Excellent stuff. So where would you most like to visit in the world? Where haven't you been that is just like, okay, I've got to go?
That's an interesting question. I guess kind of a difficult question. There's a lot of places I'd like to go to. A lot of places I'd like to go back to. I'd like to go back to Budapest. I've been looking at that a little bit. Um, been looking at Romania, the Balkans in general. I spent 10 years in Budapest, and so Budapest is kind of the capital of the Balkans unofficially. It's where a lot of the people from below, the countries below, like Serbia, Croatia, Bulgaria, Albania, they'll end up in Hungary. But I'd like to explore that region a lot more. I think it's pretty interesting. I really liked being in Hungary. It was an interesting place to stay for a while. And I think that there's a lot there that could be photographed, especially, Serbia. I think there's a lot of stuff going on in Serbia, a lot of stuff going on in Albania, Romania. I think it's a very interesting place. Interesting people. People are like I said, I think that people are really cool down in the Balkans too, very friendly.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Yeah, no, brilliant. I know it's a bit of a weird question, but if you could time travel, where and when would you visit?
I go back to late 70s because it was all analog. And I think, not just speaking of photography, I think I liked the simplicity of analog life, because everything was a record. If you wanted to listen to music, you had to put on a record or the radio. The cars weren't that fancy. And I think that people spoke to each other a lot more. I remember riding on the metro. I first came to Paris in 84. And I remember riding on the metro in Paris, and people would kind of talk to each other, or they'd be reading their paper, but you'd have conversations, a lot more conversation going on. And I think one of the things about the digital age that we're in right now is when you get on to a metro or the subway, what do you guys call it? The underground.
The
Everybody's the tube. Okay, the tube. Everybody's looking at their phone, and if you look at all their faces, it doesn't really look like they're having the best time. It's like a one-way street of information, where back in the analog days, when you talk to somebody, it was a two-way street. And I think that because you talk to people and you had a whole new experience of talking to them, their opinion, and then you could talk back to them, I think that people dealt with opposing ideas a lot better and were more accepting to maybe somebody thinking in a different way than they thought. And I think that it kind of led to ideas coming from the two separate sides. And I think that we're more polarized now. And I think a lot of that polarization that exists in the world is due to digital one-way information coming in. Back then, it just seemed a lot. And I think that the women were pretty too. Yeah. So late 70s, man. How about you? Where would you go?
Yeah, no, I think I'd actually go back and visit myself, which is a weird thing to do, and just see how much of a dick I was when I was younger, and then come back and apologize to all the people I was being a complete tool to. I think,
Yeah, I don't know. I guess if you want to get a do-over, that's the best way to do it.
I think so. So the next question then. So if you could photograph anyone in history, who would you shoot?
That's a tough one, because if you choose somebody like some popular figure, then it's really difficult to come up with a good shot of that. I had a conversation with a friend of mine the other day about going to, like, for example, when these people go to these different cities, and there'll be like one character. Like, for example, there's what's the punk rocker that's in London that everybody takes a picture
Oh,
of.
zombie punk. Zombie
Zombie
punk
punk,
4.
right? Right. So if you were to choose like a popular figure like Zombie Punk, or if you were to choose like Iggy Pop or, David Bowie, the Rolling Stones, something like that, and you got a lot of competition. Haven't really thought about this, but if I could, if it was like magic and I could go anywhere, I'd like to take a picture of the guy who discovered fire, the way to make fire, because I'd like to see the look on his face and take a picture of that, because he was probably pretty surprised. And then I'd surprise him with the flash.
Yeah, good answer. That's great. I love that. So tell me a fun fact or a story about yourself.
Used to be in a punk rock band when I was younger. I I was in kind of just local bands, and I joined a band that was doing some gigging. And when I was 15, I joined this band. I wasn't able to drive yet, so I had to have my friend drive me there to practice. And we were out of Kalamazoo, Michigan. And the first gig that I did in the punk rock band is we opened up for Black Flag when I was 15. So, but I have to tell you, like, as a 15-year-old kid, that was pretty intense, opening up for which I thought was one of the best bands in the world at that time, because I was 15 and I was into punk rock. And all of a sudden I'm like, next up's going to be the guys that, I've got all their records. So that was pretty intense. But I quit, I quit being a punk rocker about 18 years old, though. I figured that was about it. I still like the music, but I think that, like anything, it's hard to go and be, punk rocker in your 50s with a wife and kids, Yeah, I was, it was intense, dude. I got to meet Henry Rollins, the band,
Wow.
and we played for a lot of the really big, or opened up for, I should say, a lot of other really big bands like the Misfits and GBH. Had an interesting story. Ken, Picture Palace Ken, that's his Instagram. I mentioned GBH in my presentation in London, and he came up to me later. He says, the drummer of that band, he like helped me put an addition on my house.
Wow.
I was like, no shit. I said, what a small world. But it's a small world. Once you get involved in any kind of like music or photography or anything like that, you end up meeting people through it all over the place. There's always some kind of connection.
So a bit of a random question. What's your favorite word?
Megmagyarás hatatlan.
Oh, wow.
That's Hungarian, means inexplicable. Hungarian is a very intense language. I learned quite a bit of it. I'm not going to say I'm a master, but I always thought that was an interesting word. The Hungarian language, when you explain something, you Hungarian it, is a literal translation. So, do you Hungarian is how they say. Do you speak Hungarian? So, if it's Megmagyarás hatatlan, means it's not explainable, but it's not Hungarian-able, if that makes sense. It's a strange language. Once you get a little peek in the language, it makes sense, but that's my favorite word right there.
And because it's an international podcast as well, teach me a new saying that I may not know.
I think with there's one thing you learn about living in a place like Paris, and you speak French. I could speak okay French. Is you think you got it down, and then there'll be another word that means very, very close to the same thing, and you're like, oh, I thought I had this word down. I thought I didn't have to make any more room in my head. So I don't know if this is an expression or if this will work, but you know how when you say in French to watch out, you say like attention, right? That's it. But then there's also méfie-toi. So méfie-toi means like be careful, watch yourself. So it goes on and on. There's a whole bunch of kind of like be careful, danger, this and that. And the other thing is they've got prudence is another word that they use here. And prudence is like another kind of watch out for, be careful about. So it's interesting. I can introduce you to my.
So when did photography click for you? Obviously, excuse the pun, but when did you realize you could take a good photo?
I got a camera when I graduated high school. I was expecting a new bass. I was somewhat depressed because I got a camera. And I was like, oh, I got a camera. And I was like, man, because I was thinking big things about punk rock, but I got the camera. It was pretty cool. I got a Minolta X370 and it had a light meter in it. The only thing about back then, in the analog days, it was super expensive to buy film and to get it developed and put on a contact sheet and all this kind of stuff. But I took to it pretty quick. And I was out shooting all the time. I shot a lot of black and white. And I ended up getting a job at a photo studio, photo audio studio kind of thing. So we did video. We edited video on like 3/4-inch tape. So when a photographer would come in, I'd be kind of his in-house assistant. And so I learned a lot from these photographers that came in about shooting video and shooting film. Got to shoot a Hasselblad, which back then I think even cost about $20K. I remember thinking, like, I can't believe something costs like this much money even back then. I guess that's why they put it on the moon. But I did a whole bunch of shooting in like 88, I think. I ended up, because I had gone to France, I picked up a lot of French, and I got a job with a guy. We went to Paris and we were going to do some shooting here. We ended up doing a lot of shooting for photo libraries. And so I did about 6 months on the street shooting with a Nikon F3 with a 35. And we shot every day, just tons and tons of Paris. And so I don't know where the pictures are because I was an assistant at the time. So I was just turning the film over to the guy that I worked with. And so there's probably a good chance if you've seen a picture of Paris in some magazine or book that I might have taken that picture. But we'll never know. We have no way of knowing. But I took thousands of pictures. I have a few of them, but I mean, those all went to the photo. That's how you got paid. You had to put them in the photo library.
Excellent. So I know it's really a difficult question, but your favorite 3 photos, why you like them, and which ones you've taken.
I think that the cover that I put on the zine is probably one of my favorites. That was a local girl here. She's got red hair. And it's a portrait. It was one of those portraits that I took it and I kind of knew it was going to click. When I took her photo, I think I only took like 3 or 4. And I remember when I got the one, I was like, that's the one. I could tell. So that would be one of them. I would say that in India, there was one shot that I did of a guy. When you take the bus in India, in Mumbai, and in Kolkata, those are the only 2 cities that I've been to. They got these guys and they got all this money like between their fingers. When you get on the bus, you got to give them money and then they give you change. They're kind of like a human cash register. Then I'll say my third is going to be that photo of my daughter right there. Because I have to say that I'm almost, she's got some good glasses. I'm kind of bound to say that third one is my favorite because I've got her standing next to me.
So next question, what advice would you give to a new photographer?
So the advice I would give a beginning photographer is it's a numbers game. And you might get lucky and get a couple of good photos, but you got to keep on shooting because there are photos, there's something about time and there's something about numbers. So you can't do anything about time. Time's going to march on whether you want it to or not. But the numbers you can do something about. And there's something about taking a picture of the same kind of thing over and over again. They just get better. Along with my answer of what I would tell a younger photographer is take a photo trip. Do a trip. If you can pull it off, sometimes that, even if it's just someplace local, doesn't have to be some great, wild adventure. But if you go, say, Like I went to India, and in my photography, when I went to India, I think there's like before I went to India and after I went to India, because I shot that many pictures. I was literally shooting between 1,200 and 1,500 pictures a day. It made a big difference. Like, I'm not saying I got like 1,200 bangers, because I didn't, but it was also putting me in the position where I felt like, okay, I got some good shots, I think. But then it kind of caused me to think like, man, I'm going to try to like experiment a little bit. I'm going to try new angles. I'm going to try to step aside when I take this guy's picture. I'm going to try this. So it made me get more experimental. Back to your question, I would say go on a photo trip and take a ton of pictures, because it's a numbers game. And then you'll find you in the pictures eventually. Okay, this is starting to look like me. Look at other people's pictures, other people's work. There's a lot of great work out there. I'm going to try to repeat it, but it's true. The more you shoot, the luckier you get. And shoot for you, because if you try to shoot for other people, I just don't think that's going to get you anywhere, because if you try to shoot like other people too much, you can be influenced, obviously, but shoot for you, because at the end of the day, there's only one of you, and nobody's going to be able to do you better than you. But if you try to shoot exactly like somebody else, try to do somebody else's thing, they're already doing it, man. They're going to be better at them than you.
Perfect. Brilliant. So, so what's next for you? What's your next photography goals? I'm sure you've got lots on.
I've got a lot of stuff going on. I've got the zine that just came out, that was released. That can be seen at zoomental.com, name of the zine's Head. We're working out right now. It's a little bit expensive to ship because we're in France, but I found a way that we can ship cheaper because it's literature and because we're promoting France, quote unquote. So, I think we'll be able to do that. I've got a big festival that I started shooting last year. I got invited to go to. It's called Le Déferrant Festival, which is in the south of France, and it's in a town called Baccarat, and they've got a big old English cruise liner that's beached on the beach there from Liverpool, like a giant old ship, and then they have this huge rock festival right there. And so I got invited to shoot that last year. It's a 4-day festival. It's 120,000 people go through. And then I have basically all access pass, so I could go back with the bands and this and that and the other thing. But I think that the interesting thing for me is to go and shoot the people that are attending. Obviously if I get to meet a band member, that's kind of cool. But I'm not, it's kind of like taking a picture of Iggy Pop. I'm not going to get the best picture of Iggy Pop that's ever been taken because Iggy's been having pictures taken forever. But I might get the best picture or a really good picture out in the audience. So I concentrate on taking pictures of audience members for the 4 days. I'm only going for 2 days this year, but I'll be running around with approximately 60,000 people. It's a lot of fun, dude. They've got a big Ferris wheel there. I mean, it's a really well put together festival. It's a lot of fun. Thanks very much for having me on. Nice talking to you. It's interesting for me being on the other side of the interview.
And I'm just so glad you agreed to do it because, and I'm so glad we actually finally met. We followed your stuff for absolutely ages.
I appreciate that very much, Rob. It is nice to meet beforehand too, because you feel like then it's not a, total stranger. But hey, thanks so much for having me on. Best of luck with the podcast. And if I don't talk to you beforehand, I'll see you in Rome, man.
Yeah. All right. Brilliant. Yeah. All right. You take care. Be good.